You know, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the prophecy of Pakhel Votan from the ancient Mayans dating back to 600 AD. And you know, I see things on TV, well, global warming is not true. This can't happen. Don't worry about that. Everything, we have plans for the future, and we're going to do this. But you know what you have to keep in mind? And the more I see things, nobody, absolutely nobody knows anything. Nothing. And you've said that for years. Look at her. I mean, no, I'm teasing. But what I wanted to show you is a fellow by the name of Tim Russert. Tim Russert, one of the most famous news people in the history of television. He's on television every day, seen by millions and millions and millions of people. All the plans are for his big upcoming election campaign and all the work he's going to be doing on MSNBC and NBC, bringing the election news to people. 58 years old. Today, he's down at a studio in Washington, and he was doing some recordings for an upcoming Meet the Press, and he collapsed, fell to the floor, and he was dead.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And, you know, I mean, it's like you pull a switch. See, he had very, very, very important things coming up. Important interviews, important meetings with people. But nature is not emotional. It does, if it flips the switch, the lights go out. And so all of these important things that he had coming up and all of the important things about the campaign and the president doesn't mean anything. Because 1 minute he's seen by millions and millions of people as one of the most dynamic news people, and the next minute he doesn't exist. Just like that. Of course, it's devastating, something like that, to the family, but it's not one bit devastating to him because, I mean, once you're there, the next, you're not. So keep in mind that when ancients tell us of what is coming, consider that we've been forewarned. I don't know if Tim Russert had any idea of what was coming upon him, but as far as the planet Earth is concerned, and life upon it, nobody else has any idea either. And that's why that scripture in the Bible is so important. It says, and they will be marrying and giving in marriage and going to parties and going to the movies, and that's the way it is, you know. And then by the time it happens, it's over, you know. I think one of the greatest similes of that, comparisons of that, is Christmas time. Christmas time is a very exciting, beautiful time of the year until Christmas comes. When Christmas comes, it's like somebody threw the switch. It's over. What happened? You know? Yeah, we've been to every store in the county, and then, you know, it just becomes a memory. So I wanted to move anyhow in a new direction today. And it still relates to 2012 and the prophecy of Pakhel Votan, in which we now are 4 years away from December the 21st, 2012 at 11/11, which was his figuring in a different time way. I mean, he didn't say December 21st, 2012, but what he did say, science computes it to that, and that's the time when, you know, the sun aligns with the Milky Way. So what his idea was is either life on the earth will move forward as people become enlightened and aware and begin to harmonize once again with nature, or it would be obstructed by the human mind. And we're going to continue to do that. But now, since I've gotten so involved in the work of 2012, not only because of Pakal Votan, what he said, but because of what Albert Einstein said, what NASA said, what all the archaeologists and all these astronomical observatory people. I mean, there's a lot of scientific people involved here that are saying between now and 2012 that there definitely will be an event happening, see? And we'll look at that. Things, however, that happen every day. I'm saying to myself, I say, well, what's the sense of just saying, hey, this stuff is going to happen, and you've got to watch all the time as things occur? And what's the sense of saying that if when things do happen and things do occur and we don't watch, we don't note them, or we don't connect them at all to possibly being a part of 2012? Things that appear to be beyond the normal. Do you know what I'm saying? Not because you have a tornado or because you have something that happens. I mean, you know, there's always been those things. But I'm talking about, here we are 4 years from 2012, and things that happen that are shocking and seem to be something that no one ever thought would happen. In other words, I can't simply discuss the implications of 2012 and then when we experience things that may very well be part of that great change, ignore it. So this threw me a bit of a curve as far as starting today's message, because I'd already pieced it together when other things popped up that I'm concerned about. I want to show you first, right now, a picture taken yesterday of downtown in the middle of a large city, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Take a look at this. This is the middle of a big city, all the big buildings, and you actually have waves coming down the middle of the street, see? Now, let me show you another shot of it, not as quite as dramatic as that, but you can see how much of it is underwater, and take a look at this. Officials estimated that 100 blocks were underwater. Now 400 blocks today are underwater. In Cedar Rapids, where several days of preparation could not hold back the rain-swollen river. Rescuers had to use boats to reach many stranded residents, and people could be seen dragging suitcases up closed highway exit ramps to escape the water. So in other words, people are trying to walk up the exit ramps of the highway so, you know, they could get to higher ground. And look at this. We're just kind of at God's mercy right now, so hopefully people that never prayed before this, it might be a good idea to start. Lynn County Sheriff Don Zeller said, we're going to need a lot of prayers, and people are going to need a lot of patience and understanding. So, you know, I know we've heard that before in floods, but the next statement is why I felt I better isolate this one into the 2012 file, because maybe there's something here. Take a look at this. The picture, here's a fellow coming with his dogs or cat there carrying him. We are seeing a historic hydrological event taking place with unprecedented river levels occurring, said Brian Pierce, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Davenport. We're in uncharted territory. This is an event beyond what anybody could even imagine.
Well, the water, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The point is that the water you have, even around here, all from the north and south, the wood of ice comes to water. And then our levels have gone up.
That's right. But here, say, where you get to the point of being just 4 years out from Pakal Votan's prophecy, you have something where a meteorologist says nobody could even imagine something like this would ever happen. It reminds me of Chris Davidson when he talks about Edda Karina, or what he would say, science has never seen anything like this. I mean, we never could imagine anything like this. So when you read words like that, and you think of the tsunami recently, you think of the cyclone at Myanmar, you think of the China earthquake, you think of bees disappearing, you can't look at them individually because we've always had things like that. I mean, that's nature. But because of the extreme power, the death and destruction, you look at them together and then you say, are we starting to see a developing pattern? And I say that not because of Pakel Votan's prophecy alone, but because of what NASA said about the elements and the power from the sun between now and 2012, and about the magnetic fields from the sun intercoursing with the Milky Way galaxy and all that. See, remember something, and this is important. 2012, that prophecy, brings with it scientific documentation that say electromagnetic impulses will change as the sun begins to align with the center of the Milky Way galaxy on December 21st, 2012 at 11:11. This is the first time this has happened in 26,000 years, and it won't happen again for another 26,000 years. And NASA said that the solar cycle between now and 2012 is going to be the most intense since records were kept over 400 years ago. And at the same time, the sun's magnetic poles are prophesied to, are predicted to flip in 2012. Now that's not a big deal. That has happened all the time. But when you start putting all of these things together and on top of one another, they've been saying, just like Al said a moment ago, they've been predicting with the polar caps are melting and the water is going up higher and higher. And everybody, you don't want to pay attention. There's always been global warming. There's never been global warming that had to contend with the amount of industrial pollution that goes into the atmosphere today. And so here you have this guy from the National Weather Service saying this is an event beyond what anybody could even imagine could happen. And when you see things like that, then you say, this is something outside of the norm. And then you say, now wait a minute, outside of the norm, and here we are within that window of 2012. The fact that Albert Einstein said that when bees disappear, life has 4 more years, and 2012 is 4 years away, and the bees are disappearing. And it suddenly comes together with these violent rampages of nature, the melting ice and the water rising and all of that stuff. And then it's true. Nobody could ever imagine. I mean, a few years ago, we didn't even talk about stuff like this. But 600 years ago, a guy did talk about this. Pakel Votan knew that humanity would become disconnected from the laws of the natural world and would fall ignorant of our sacred interdependence with nature. He foretold of our accelerated technological society and the resulting damage of our collective diversions from natural law in exchange for materialistic values. He knew. And that's exactly what is happening. I mean, Gore was going around, he's talking about global warming, and people say, it doesn't exist, it's always been that way. But yet you have these situations like we saw in Iowa, you have situations like we're seeing around the world. People say, we never saw anything like this before. So, if people are going to ignore it and say, then you ignore things like this at your own doom, because we have been forewarned. I mean, Votan spoke about this 2,000 years ago. Gore's speaking about it now. It's only 4 years to go. So to this very day, 2,000 years after Votan, all we can say is people better pray, or we're in uncharted territory. Or we shouldn't be, because of the fact that we had a responsibility spiritually to the earth. Even Buddha said that the storms that come and range and are so wild and so forth are fed by negative impulses, negative electrical impulses that come out of the minds of people. And that's the problem. Nature and our interdependence with nature has been pushed back to the rear of our concerns because of our obsession with material values. You'll hear it every day. Let me show you something. And you people laugh at this, and I've told you about this before. Let me show you something. And it's funny, but it's true. It is. That is a Dugan's Bakery truck. But this is the astounding part about that. And I don't care what anybody says. I think it portrays the fact where the money changers were so intent on the oil industry. Dugan's Bakery were active in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and had several hundred of these electrical trucks running all over New Jersey and Pennsylvania in 1939. In 1939. That's an electric truck. The guy would get in, he'd have that stick, and he'd just go, off it would go.
You remember?
Here he comes again. He's on a toot tonight. He's on a toot tonight.
He's older than you.
You remember.
There was these railway newspaper, the buses for picking up their stuff from New York City.
Right.
Same thing.
That's right.
And
But I mean, here's proof, Albert. This is proof. This Dugan's Baker. And I'll tell you something else, Albert. I rode in that truck. Maybe not that one, but it was just like that one.
They had trolleys too.
Well, they had, yes, but the trolleys and the electric buses, they had wires, and the thing would come off the wire, and he had, there's no wires with
No,
this.
I know, but that existed then too.
That existed then too, and it's very true. And there was a lot less pollution in places like Newark when it did. But the point here is, no wires, electric truck in Pennsylvania and New Jersey in 1939.
Bill, how did they charge?
I have no clue. I have no clue.
Boy, I'm glad I stumped you that time.
But I mean, the guy went out.
tell you how.
Oh.
What's going on? We're going to have to turn your chair around.
Well, it's a accelerator that go from 0 up to fast.
Yeah, but how did they charge it? No, how did they charge it? No, we know how it ran. We don't know how they charged it.
Do something with you. Get on top of him. Sit on him. Now, you're right, Albert. That's how they accelerated. How they charge it. But here's the point. These guys went to work for 8 hours, and they drove from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night in an electric truck in 1939. But you see, this was a threat to the oil industry big time. And that was the end of it. So that's the truth. The technology was stopped because of the need to protect the oil industry. And to this very day, you know what's going on? If that technology had been allowed to flourish, we all would have electric cars and everything would be fine. To this very day, people are clamoring for us to start drilling in pristine forests and national parks and near shoreline to continue the profits of the oil industry. And Pacal Votan told us that exactly this was going to happen. Exactly this was going to happen. And so here you had something that goes back, 69, 70 years ago. And it was stopped because it would impact negatively on the oil industry. And now they're saying, well, let us go drill in Alaska and let us drill in all of these beautiful places. You see. So yeah, who's responsible? We are. Let me show you one more item that caught my attention this week as a possible connection with December 21st, 2012. There was a program scheduled to be on ABC television in September. It's being produced now, and it's going to be a big event, okay? And this is what it is. Scientists from around the globe join ABC News in a forum on surviving the century, okay? Are we living in the last century of our civilization? Is it possible that all of our technology, knowledge, and wealth cannot save us from ourselves? Is that something? I mean, here's this, I get so excited, you almost tingle, because here is Wotan, 600 AD, said this, and here now all of these scientists are coming to ABC News, and what are they saying? With all of the knowledge, with all the technology, and we cannot save us from ourselves. Could our society actually be heading towards collapse? According to many of the world's top scientists, the answer is yes, unless we take action now. Okay? A dramatic preview of an unprecedented ABC News event called Earth 2100. This September, in Earth 2100, the greatest minds across the globe will join together in a countdown to the year 2100 to tell us what we must do to survive the next century and what may happen if we don't. Oh, you say, well, 2100, apocalypse. You know something? They're off 89 years from Paco Wotan. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Paco Wotan said, folks, you don't have that much time, but that's okay. You're only 89 years away. I mean, that's pretty close, I would say. The more you see, the more credit and credence goes to the things that this ancient Mayan scientist said. 89 years difference in a prediction that could be the end. Okay? Let's look at the next thing that says. The time to act is now, says Peter Gleich, president of Pacific Institute. 21st century is going to be the century which determines whether we live or die as a sustainable species. As populations grow, as our use of resources grows, I think we get closer and closer to that edge. Experts say that extreme changes in climate combined with dwindling resources, famine, war, and disease have the potential to create a post-apocalyptic world in less than 100 years. Harvard University and Woods Hole climatologist John Haldren says we cannot continue going down the same path. My God, he could have been sitting with Paco back in the Mayan jungles and said the same thing. Because you could hear Paco Wotan sitting over there on his rock ledge or wherever he sat saying, you ain't kidding, pal.
All right, one more.
Here he comes again, ladies and gentlemen.
It's crazy. But in all sincerity, from the beginning, before man was made, right, a species would come up to a peak, down. And then again, a different one, go up and down. And we, unfortunately, are the same way. We're one that goes up, and now we're going down. It is.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting point. But you wonder, even like with all of those things that did happen, and you're true, like the rise and fall of the Roman Empire and all of that stuff. But you wonder, does it have to be? Or is it the fact that we never learned from the previous civilizations that went up and then went down? And so, what did they say? If you don't learn, then you're doomed to repeat the same thing. It's a good point, though, Albert. Let's go to the next thing what he says. If we continue on business as usual, we are going to see more floods, more droughts, more heat waves, more wildfires, more ice melting, and faster sea level rise. We really have less than a decade to start getting this right. Well, that's closing in. That's only 6 years away from Wotan. If we're still dragging our feet in 2015, I think it really becomes at that point almost impossible for the world to avert a degree of climate change that we simply will not be able to manage without intolerable cost and consequences. So, let's give a little credit to the guy who said this first. All right? But you see, the point is, when he said it, we had 2,000 years to get it right. See, could somebody have sat down with him and said, what should we do? Well, well, they would probably say, that guy, he's a Republican or he's a Democrat. I don't pay attention to him. You see? But we had 2,000 years. Now, if you take his, and I'm really putting more and more credence into what he said and who he was. And you know why? Because of all this stuff. All of this stuff. Everybody's coming around saying, what? He's off by, or they're off by 80 years? And as I said, 2,000 years you had a chance to change. And like Albert said, and it's very true, the empires rose, the people rose, and nobody seemed to take the challenge of what has to be done. And what he said has to be done is you have to respect and harmonize, understand, and work in a union with nature. And what he said was so true. When you get all of this material wealth, it's going to distract you from that. So whatever you want to think about what he said, is it not curious that the entire world's scientists will be coming together to ABC to discuss and to point out the very things that he pointed out 2,000 years ago? Now, we spent a number of sessions discussing the detail, possibilities involved with the prediction for the end of the age we're presently living in, and a new age of harmony and oneness with nature. My feeling at this point is that the situation will become so acutely serious that nature will force people to move in a completely different direction, back into a thing with nature. I mean, come on. We saw in New Jersey yesterday, we were somewhere where gas is $4.05 a gallon. And we've heard people, we've seen people here predicting $12 and $15 a gallon, which means no cars are allowed on Route 9, bicycles only. See? Yes, because what else could you do? You're going to pull in, fill her up, cost you $300. But anyhow, we've spent a lot of time talking about that. Paul Voltaire called and warned us, don't allow yourselves to get so consumed in materialism that you forget about nature. We did. And now science is saying the same thing. What he said, like, okay, if you do this, then God, or whatever you want to call it, will orchestrate the change that will happen right before our eyes. And that's what's going on. I mean, just think, for what you saw just tonight. I mean, here are people in Iowa, of all places, saying, my God, nobody would ever conceive that this could have happened. I mean, you would never imagine anything like this. And it's happening now. So that's why I began the program today, bringing your attention to things that are happening. So don't just think of Wotan and the Mayans and 2112 or 2012 and all this business. Don't look at what happens tomorrow. Read the paper, see what's going on, and say, wow, maybe this. Because when you see things like, this has never happened before, we've never seen anything like this in the history, stop for a minute and connect it. Connect it. And so this then becomes an approach to a kind of natural Armageddon. Not the kind that so many Christian organizations who look for an Armageddon war to explode, that they'll be heralding the return of Jesus on this sea of blood and destruction from atomic bombs. Now, they have the same obsession with war and materialism instead of being in a harmony with nature. I said somewhere, actually last week, I said if Christians are worrying about gays, they better start worrying about bees. But you know what? when you look at this, we're going to go into, I saw something, read something from Aristotle. I was telling Joan, or I don't know who I was talking to, I think it was Frank, that he coined a phrase that I think has enlightened me to what's going on. And he said what true life is not bodies. But get these two words, the disembodied mind. And I thought, the disembodied mind. In other words, a mind without a body. And then I looked at these evangelists, some of these people who come with the cross on the screen and singing the songs of Jesus, and they get up there and they're all excited because we're bombing Iraq and killing people by the thousands, and they're edging on the possibility of bombing Iran. I say, wait a minute. How is this possible? Who's really inside of these bodies? There's a very warped view that is it is right down mainline Christianity that says God will cause a slaughter of millions of people in an atomic warfare of some kind in the Middle East so he can bring the Prince of Peace back to earth. They never stop to think that it is not God mandating anything. It's us. It's them. Friends, God didn't drive the bees away. We did. So people who claim to want to hasten the return of Jesus are the very ones who are agitating for a war to be waged in the Middle East. It's an amazing thing. Even to the point where, and I got to stay away from this election stuff, but even to the point where one of the nominees for president running had to come out and say, oh, I refute the endorsement from this reverend. Of course. It's like getting an endorsement from the devil. We're going to kill everybody. Isn't it a bizarre thing that when those who claim to be followers of Jesus actually to turn out to be so warlike? And they're not really. The people that come into the churches, they're nice people, they're decent people, they're looking for peace and love and healing and all that stuff. But you know what? Somebody gets up on a stand like this and screams at them, and they absolutely, and they'll vote till bombs away. That's the way it goes. That is why nature has to intervene, to turn the mass mind away from the old ways of war and conflicts and fear to the new way to culminate on 2012. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to show you before you, okay, well you did. I'm going to show you, this is General Boykin, one of the highest ranking generals in the United States Army. Do you know where he is here? He's in a church. He's preaching in a church. He goes around to Christian churches. He preaches that God shows him where the enemy soldiers are so he can attack them. Can you imagine? But look at, he comes with all of his medals on, and they're back there singing, "Hey, gather at the river, oh soldiers, onward." Yeah, this lady here, yeah, she's not a.
Joan, I think they are.
Yeah. And this is his General Boykin, a high-ranking military man, and God shows him. He's coming through there with his soldiers. Come on, men. Wait a minute, General. They're over there in the trench. Okay, everybody, fire. Blah, blah, blah. And people eat it. Oh, it's wonderful. How can you possibly get people to turn their minds to a new direction when you have military people like this one preaching to them in church as to how God helps them fight and kill the enemy. The minds of people who claim to be followers of Jesus have been polluted by people like this who will preach to them the glory of war, which is Antichrist. You know, just think for a minute. Consider the teachings of Jesus, and then tell me how people in Christian churches can allow a General Boykin to preach to them. How is that possible? The human mind that is hoping for a nuclear war in the Middle East or the bombing of Iran is not the mind that's going to be able to handle the change coming to people in 2012. They're not going to be able to deal with it. It is the Jesus mind. It is the Christ mind. It is the Krishna mind. The Buddha mind. They're all the same thing. And that's what's necessary. And either people will change and be renewed in their mind, or nature will renew it for them. And that may not be very pleasant. So you say, well, okay, what is the Christ mind? Let's take a look. This is what the Christ mind is. You have learned how it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, offer the wicked man no resistance. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. Now, you know what I say to that? You're nuts. I am not going to do that. You see? But everybody else said, Jesus is Lord. Jesus is my Lord. Okay, smack him. Turn the other side, smack him again. No, they're not going to do that. Nobody's going to do it. But you know why he said this? And do you know why this is in the book? Because it's impossible. That you can't be a follower of Jesus Christ. The only way that disembodied one inside of you can follow Jesus Christ is when you shut off the very instructions that are here. When you shut off the very things that you hear from the outside world. You can't do that. See? So here you have this guy saying, offer no resistance to the wicked man, and if he wants to knock down the World Trade Center, let him knock down the White House and the Empire State Building too. Why not? That's it? But they say, oh, we love Jesus. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Now, when is the last time that you heard a Christian pastor, a Christian minister, lift their hands in prayer for the repose of the soul of Muhammad Atta and all these guys who knocked down the World Trade Center? They don't. Of course not. When have you heard a prayer service to give thanks and praise to, what's his name? Not Obama. Osama bin Laden. When's the last time?
Better say that again.
Osama bin Laden. See, it doesn't happen. But you can't be a Christian unless you do that. And nobody can do that. So what is the charade all about? Okay. You know the commandments, you must not kill. Oh, listen, George, be a little slower that a little bit. You're jumping ahead of me. And Jesus says, when you stand in prayer, forgive whatever you have against anybody. Okay, you must not kill. We've killed over 150,000 people, men, women, and children in Iraq who never did anything to anybody. That isn't war, that's murder. You see? War is when the other guy attacks and you attack. All right, that's not what this is. When you stand in prayer, forgive whatever you have against anybody. Forgive Osama bin Laden. Forgive the people that blew up the World Trade Center. Forgive. But where do you hear that coming from Christian preachers? They say that you do that. So how does the absolute peace of mind of Christ equate with the born-again Christian mind of one of the most powerful preachers in the country, Pastor John Hagee? Here's John, and this is what he says. John Hagee, the controversial evangelical leader, argued in the late 1990 sermon. Now, get this one. The Nazis had operated on God's behalf to chase the Jews from Europe and shepherd them to Palestine. According to the Reverend, Adolf Hitler was a hunter sent by God who was tasked with expediting God's will of having the Jews reestablish the state of Israel. Now, this guy packs in 17,000 people every week. How can you go? So here's my question. Oh, he's got the thing. He's got the cross behind here. He's got the microphone. He's got the choir and everything. Who the heck is in there, really? Who is in there, really? Okay? How can a person who claims to be a spokesman for Jesus Christ say that Adolf Hitler and all of the evil things he did was sent by God to do his will? How is that possible? And yet you will find 17,000 penguins going in there every week. And you know, you have to ask another question. How would it be possible to move into 2012 and experience a new age of harmony with nature and peace with a mind like that? Let me show you another one. This is Reverend Rod Parsley. There he is. Nice-looking guy, young guy, dynamic speaker. This is what Islam is an antichrist religion that intends through violence to conquer the world. Parsley says on the DVDs reviewed by ABC News, America was founded with the intention of seeing this false religion destroyed. Parsley says, and I believe September 11th was a generational call to arms that we can no longer ignore. Okay? So he takes the 19 people that did this, the Osama bin Laden that did this, and he lumps in with them the people of Egypt, he lumps in with them the people of Turkey, he lumps in them the people of Iran and Iraq, and anybody. See, they have to be wiped out. But here's the thing. He's the Jesus guy. And Jesus says, you know, you don't kill, you don't hurt, you don't even get angry with people. And he says, this is a call to arms that we can no longer ignore. In other words, pick up your sword, and then his Jesus will say, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. See? But, I mean, you have to understand something. These two guys are really big deals. They're big people. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people follow them and hang on every word. Go on his website sometime. You say, listen to the latest from Pastor Rod. This is what Pastor Rod had to say. He wants people to go to war. And you know what? Every one of the thousands of people that follow him agree with him. Not because they really do, but because Pastor Rod said it. So how does this in any way fit with the philosophy of Jesus? He didn't only say you shouldn't hurt anybody. He says you shouldn't even get angry with anybody. So moving into 2012, you have to understand that the mind of Christ has been infiltrated. And this is going to kick you, so hold on now. And I'll explain it. The mind of Christ has been infiltrated by the mind of Satan. Now I'm going to explain that in a bit. See. These people have snuck into the world of Jesus Christ, and with pretense that they are followers of Jesus Christ, has encouraged, motivated, and controlled minds of other people who are innocently coming to understand Jesus Christ, and have turned these people who are looking for peace, love, and healing into warriors and supporters of violence and hate against others. That's what they've done. Their words have absolutely nothing in common with the words of Jesus. They fit the picture perfectly. The Bible draws the pictures of those. The Bible tells us. Look what it says. And think of these two guys, and there's others like them. This is what it says. Many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. that we no longer act like children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men. That word sleight is like tricks, like sleight of hand, okay? And cunning craftiness whereby they lie in wait to deceive. I'm sure there are people saying, he's talking about himself. That's Bill Donahue's description. He's deceiving. I'll tell you the difference between me and them. The difference between me and them is what I teach is support and obedience to the teachings of Jesus Christ to the letter. I hope nobody comes to hit me on one side of the head, that there, and the other side. I would fail at that. But as far as not hurting, not fighting, not killing, and reaching out to nature, yes, that's what we do here. Every statement that Jesus made is taught here as gospel. While these others support wars and violence and hate against others in a direct confrontation with the teachings of Jesus Christ. I drove by a church, big Christian church the other day, and it said, God bless our troops. You know what that says? God, make sure you let them kill the others, but don't let them get hurt themselves. As if some God somewhere is an American. See? Wonder if the God that they're praying to is a Muslim. What would you do then? God, help our troops. Wonder if he's a Muslim, then they're going to win. The ultimate pacifist, Jesus, who it says, wouldn't break a bruised reed. And they're saying, God bless our troops, as if those people don't belong to God. How can anyone who is a follower of Jesus say, these are our troops, but those other people are evil? And people fighting in the battlefield, they don't even know who they are. Only concern yourself with our troops, God. Don't worry about them. So this is the type of religious teaching that draws up sides in a never-ending struggle of violence and hate based on cult-like allegiance to one's country or organization, or cult, which they are. It's the kind of thing that presents a frightening picture for our entrance into 2012 and what's going to happen. It leads us to an attempt to understand the nature of things. And this is where it gets deep. Where do these minds that stand in the pulpit and prostitute the words of Jesus into warlike, inflammatory hate, where do these minds come from? Who's inside of those heads? What is hidden beyond sight that we have never understood because we've always looked at the physical? Oh, that's the pastor. Who is inside of the pastor's body? Now let's consider Pastor Hagee again. There he is. There's John Hagee. Now, it brings us to a deep quantum reality of what is going on here. And we have to understand this. We see a physical man. He's a little heavy, but that's okay. He's got a nice suit on. He's a decent-looking guy. Got a microphone. He's the pastor. He's with Christians, and we understand him to be an administrator of sorts of the Christian group. There he is. We call him pastor or a preacher, Pastor John. He looks every bit the part. He really does. Every bit the part. Holy, holy, holy. But now for just a second, I want you to forget the external appearance. Forget about the name, Pastor John Hagee. Forget about the church. And forget about what you see with your eyes. There is something that you cannot see with your eyes. There is a disembodied mind inside of here that no one knows where it came from. But it came, and it came with a purpose. You can't see that, can you? There is somebody inside of that body, just like there is someone inside of your body, operating the body and brain. Someone who we cannot see, and that disembodied mind inside of that head is a light being from the quantum well. Who is it? Where does it come from? You know what everybody is, really? You know what this is? Every day, Halloween. Everybody's in a costume. And none of us know who is behind the mask. Oh, you're coming around as the preacher. You're dressed like the preacher. I'll give you candy. No, I'll give you money. What is this trying? What is the being inside of that head trying to do? Because it has a purpose. It is a light being from a quantum dimension, and it is operating a body on the physical plane, and it has something that it wants to accomplish. The outside is a disguise like a Halloween suit of a Christian preacher. But no one can see or understand who is in the inside. Oh, very nice. I mean, sure, he has a nice, loving family, a nice home, nice to his wife, takes folks out, has dinner, likes to go maybe fishing or play ball, go to the ball game. Everything. But there is somebody in there from another dimension who has a purpose. And what does the Bible say about that? For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. It's interesting. Let's see what the next one is. I'm a little out of whack here. Oh, no, go back. Go back. All right. So Satan operates as a light being. Now listen, here's the important thing. When I say Satan, there is no such person. Okay? Satan is a type of mind. Satan is a word that describes a type of mind that encourages violence and hate. The way the government has been. When you use that word, you get nobody paying much attention to it. But just think of it is that long ago, this was used in mythology to describe the way some people think. So when you think violence, hate, destruction, attacking, and all of this kind of stuff, that is a Satan mind. And that's what it means. It's just a form of a thought process. So you have to look at that word Satan. Remember, we're not dwelling or not dealing with physical bodies. We're dealing with things such as you and I who actually dwell in the quantum world. And we operate electrically these bodies. The bodies are only like cars. See? Who's driving your car? You are. And you know what goes on inside of your car when nobody else is around. I don't know. I don't want to know. So I really have no idea who you are. And you have no idea who I am.